what happens when you desire the promise more? Okay, so we kind of spoke about like what it is, what it looks like when you desire the promise more. So I do have a couple points that I want to share with you about what happens spiritually or physically. So one, you rush ahead of God, okay, mostly out of impatience or haste. And this is absolutely modeled in the story of Abraham and Sarah. I mean, it's just such a great story for what we're talking about. If you want to talk about promises, look at Abraham and Sarah in Genesis, okay? Probably around chapter 10 through like the 20s is all about Abraham and Sarah and Isaac. When you rush ahead of God, you tend to create an Ishmael. Hello, you create things out of season. You get in trouble. You get into a situation where, you know what I mean? God has to do some undoing. He has to do some backtracking. He has to make you do a U-turn so he can get you back on the path, which is a detour, which is a delay. Okay, you've caused a detour, a delay to your own promise. To your own promise because you rushed out of impatience. God now has to take you along the even longer route. Okay, if you felt like you were on a long route before, now you're going on an even longer route because God had to correct what you did out of error or out of turn and then take you back on the same path you tried to escape by creating a counterfeit, essentially. Don't do that, girlfriend. Don't do that, king. Wait for the promise, no matter how long it seems like you're waiting. And even if you're waiting, there's always things to do in the waiting season. We know this. You're never waiting on God. You're waiting in God, okay? You're waiting in his care, in his provision, in his divine timing. You're waiting under his wing, okay? You're waiting and you're building and you're being built up so that when the due season comes, you're ready to receive. You have a house to put a wife in, okay? You have allowed God to develop you to become a helpmeet, okay? You have, you've reached a certain point in your life where you can offer wisdom and instruction to a child, okay? Don't rush things out of season. God knows why he has certain events happen at certain times or seasons of our life, and that's just when we're ready according to him. So stop trying to make things perfect in your time and your understanding of God's timeline and just release, okay? You trying to rush ahead of God shows a lack of faith. It shows a lack of patience, okay? It shows a lack of joy, of contentment. What are these, honey? Fruits of the Spirit. If you're rushing ahead of God, you're showing him that you're not even allowing him to develop his precious fruits in you, which are a byproduct of abiding in him. How can you expect to enjoy the gifts God wants to bestow upon you, to bless you with, if you do not have the correct heart posture to receive them? If you don't have patience, you will never enjoy any of the seasons God takes you through. You'll never be able to find contentment in your life because you're always looking forward to the next, to the next, to the next, without being present here. If you do not have faith, my dear, you have nothing. You have nothing. If you rush ahead of God out of doubt, okay, out of haste, you're showing him that you do not even believe that he will be good on his word. And that is not what we believe here at Healed Woman, okay? Number 2, what happens when you desire the promise more than God, okay? You run or try to escape the work attached to the promise, okay? Out of disobedience or even out of misunderstanding, okay? When you rush ahead of God, you're showing him that not only do you lack faith and patience, but you have misunderstood what he has told you. And misunderstanding, that's a little bit different because sometimes you may be wavering in your ability to hear God, and that just shows that you really need to be built up more in him. But sometimes you really do think that you've misheard God. You really do think, did I miss him? Like, did I miss an instruction to get to where I need to be? Did I miss a certain cue? Like, did I miss the promise? And that's okay. We've all questioned if we've missed the promise before. But you trying to create your own path or go a different route to get to the same expected outcome will not work, because only God's path will lead you to his expected outcome. Another path is not going to take you to that expected outcome, my dear. And even if it does, it's a counterfeit. Even if it resembles the promise, much like with Abraham and Sarah, Ishmael was never supposed to exist. I mean, God turned that situation around, but some of us have created situations that really weren't supposed to exist. They weren't supposed to be on our radar. But because we rushed, now God had to clean up a little bit of mess, okay? I'm not saying a child is a mess, my goodness, no. But I'm saying things that happen outside of God's original design tend to create chaos in our lives. And then we have to spend more time cleaning up the mess, cleaning up that chaos so that we can get back on the straight and narrow, okay? Don't rush ahead of God. Don't show him that you're so impatient that you cannot wait on his promise. And you really can't escape the work attached to the promise, okay? You may try to take a shortcut or, shave some time off by doing things in a halfway attempt, okay, in a halfway attempt, but it really just, I think it adds on more time, because whatever you try to short circuit by taking a shortcut, God still has to take you through the scenic route. One of my favorite pastors, he said, God does not operate in shortcuts. God operates in like highways and scenic routes and like the long way. Okay. He will always take you what seems to be the longest way, but it's because he's developing you in the way there. He's pruning things in you. The fruits of the Spirit. He's pruning things out of you, your appetites from your former lifestyle before you surrendered to the King. And these things take time. They really just do. Anyone who's ever waited on a promise knows that it does not happen like that. And if it seems like it happened like that, it's because you were probably being prepared for a while and you weren't aware that that's how God was preparing you. That's absolutely happened to me, at least, okay? So could it be that you desire the promise so much you develop laser focus for it and forget what's happening around you? Okay, this is still for point number 2, that you miss out, that you are completely unaware to what the process is to that promise. Okay, don't doubt the wait, don't doubt the pruning and the fierce preparation season, because it's building things in you that you'll need to be able to handle that promise correctly. Okay, my dear? Hope you all are really grasping this, because this is key information I wish I had when I first asked God for promises. I tried to take shortcuts. I tried, I was absolutely creating Ishmaels. I was creating situations that didn't need to exist. I was creating things because I just didn't understand why he was taking me the long route. And when I finally submitted to him again and again and again, he said, my daughter, this whole time I've been preparing you for the promise. It's not going to happen the way you want it to. It's not going to look like how you thought it would. But it doesn't mean that my ways are any less effective, okay? They're unconventional, but they're not any less effective, okay? So I do want to leave it there. I think I'm going to come back with a part 2, because I actually don't really like having videos longer than 30 minutes. So I'm going to break this one up because there's so much more to share, okay? So for now, we've covered the first 2 points about what happens when you desire the promise more. And in next week's installment, I'll give you a little sneak preview. We'll continue this list, and then we'll talk about how you can reverse that heart posture of desiring the promise more and focus more on the promise keeper while he works out your promise for you. Okay, I promise it's going to be beautiful when you allow the King to fully develop you in the way that he's planned.